Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jason Fairbrush, Public Transportation and Parking Director. Again, it's my privilege this morning to be able to share with you an update regarding the city's first bus rapid transit corridor. As you know, this project has been discussed with Council several times, so I know many of you are familiar with the project. Just as a couple of reminders, the project is being funded about 50% through a federal build grant, where the city received a $14 million build grant. And then, of course, local funds make up the remaining portion of the budget. One of the things that I thought I would share with you is that as we've progressed on this project, I feel like it truly is a great example of departmental coordination to move the project along and deliver on what we promised. Although, again, I'm able to introduce the update to you today. Public Works and Planning, our stakeholder work group, all contribute regularly to the progress of this project. The Utilities Department is also working with us as we move forward with the park and ride concept at the end of the corridor at Northwest Expressway and Meridian. So again, just a lot of departments involved in moving the project forward. So we've recently completed a few milestones with regards to the project. One of those is public engagement. As you know, we've had a couple of town hall meetings where we've received feedback from the community about the project, and we will have other community engagement opportunities as we move forward. We have initiated the branding for the BRT. So just like we did with OKC streetcar, we will brand the BRT so that it is distinct and separate, but related to our Embark family of services. So we have started that branding project. We've also took a major step last Friday during the COTPA Board of Trustees meeting, where the board approved a request for proposals to issue basically proposals for bus procurement. So the vehicles that we'll use along the BRT corridor, that solicitation, if you will, is being advertised, and we're moving forward on bus procurement. And then, of course, what brings us here today's council item, the receipt of the preliminary design report. We've completed about 30% design for the project, are continuing to work through that design this summer. And we have with us, I'd like to introduce, and I'll quickly turn it over to Brian Comer and Marcus Geist from HNTB. And HNTB is our engineering consultant for the BRT, and they're going to actually share the preliminary design report with you this morning. So Brian, are you with us?
I am. And can you see my screen? I just shared my screen.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so good morning. It's good to be with you this morning and provide the update on the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit project. So I'm sure you're all familiar by now, but Bus Rapid Transit is a high-quality bus-based system that delivers fast, reliable, and efficient service operating in a rail-like manner. The Northwest BRT service will include those specially branded vehicles, like Jason mentioned, will include the brand of the system, and they will be distinctive from the rest of the Embark fleet and provide amenities to improve the customer experience. The BRT fleet will include 7 operating vehicles and 2 spares for a total of 9 operating vehicles in the fleet. The Northwest BRT will include level boarding platforms. So obviously you're all familiar with the OKC streetcar. This significantly improves boarding and alighting times and significantly differentiates this from the rest of the Embark bus service. So the Northwest BRT, as Jason mentioned, will be Central Oklahoma's first BRT line and will provide customers with faster and more frequent service. The BRT will expand local and regional mobility options, improve job access, and enhance the livability along the corridor. So this will be a significant improvement for the Northwest area. The design efforts for the Northwest BRT rely heavily on past planning efforts. Jason mentioned the recent public engagement as part of the design process, but the public engagement goes all the way back to the multimodal concept plan in 2015 and 2016, which included significant public engagement and defined the preliminary route and station locations, as well as connections to major activity centers along the corridor. So the BRT is funded 50% through the BUILD grant, which stands for Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. And this is a $1.5 billion discretionary grant program through USDOT. And it funds a wide variety of infrastructure projects, transportation projects, including transit. The project has about 50% of the funding. The project total budget is $28.8 million. 50% is funded through that BUILD grant, as Jason mentioned, and 50% through local match. So the BRT system includes many different elements that I've touched on before. So the first big enhancement that we would like to touch on is the technology enhancements, including transit signal priority. And this is something that's significantly improved running times for the OKC streetcar and will also be included as part of the project on the Northwest BRT. And TSP uses technology to reduce dwell times at traffic signals for the transit vehicles by extending the green light time or reducing the red time at a given signal as the vehicle approaches. The system will also include several enhancements to make the service more efficient, including bus pull-offs to improve system reliability and safety, and queue jumps that will allow the transit vehicle and emergency vehicles to bypass traffic and clear the intersection through a dedicated turn lane. The BRT service will include improved service frequency, 15 minutes within the peak period, branded vehicles, level boarding platforms, and the BRT line is approximately 8 miles long and will include 16 station pairs or three potential park and rides. So we'd like to talk a bit about the stations, and as you see with this rendering, the stations look a lot like the OKC streetcar stations, or will remind you a lot of those stations. Each BRT station will include a raised platform for level boarding with ADA ramps at each end of the platform, and the platform will include amenities and will be ADA accessible. The platform will include a shelter with seating and specially branded pylon, and the pylon will be visible from a significant distance and will serve as a landmark and wayfinding for pedestrians and cyclists looking for a BRT stop. The pylon will include real-time information display to let you know when the next bus is arriving, provide additional information for transit customers, and potentially advertising. Each station will include a ticket kiosk where you can purchase your fare prior to boarding the bus, a litter receptacle, and a lock with at least one bike rack. We would like to accommodate 2 bike racks depending upon each station and where we can fit those in. The BRT alignment will run mainly along the Northwest Expressway and Classen Boulevard, and the route serves 3 hospitals, several residential neighborhoods, and provides an important connection to downtown. The Northwest BRT, all the way back to the concept plan, is designed to serve areas of relatively high employment and population density within the Northwest corridor. The route will come within half mile of 91,000 jobs and 23% of Oklahoma City's employment base. The route also comes within a half mile of 40,000 residents and provides the ability to connect many more residents through park and ride opportunities, especially to serve that growing Northwest region. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcus, and we're going to quickly walk through each of the station locations. Marcus?
Thanks, Brian. I guess you guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity to come today and talk regarding the route and each of these individual station locations. So like Brian said, there's 32 stops along the way, or 32 stations. So we'll go through these pretty quickly. You'll see sidewalk and signal improvements at many of the locations that'll help get the BRT riders back to the nearest intersection. Riders will be able to use the bike rack at each of the station locations, or load their bike on the bus with now the ability to get from the northwest part of Oklahoma City back to downtown, connect to the existing streetcar, and in many cases you'll see where it ties back to the OKC trail network that was built as part of the MAPS 3 program. Like Brian mentioned, the route will start in kind of we'll start downtown, work our way up Classen and down Northwest Expressway, and end at Northwest Expressway and Meridian. So just diving right in here. So here at Robinson, actually, Brian, can you go back to Broadway and Main? So on the lower right here, you can see kind of the general map. You'll see the yellow dot. So as we go along the route, you'll see kind of that yellow dot move along with us. So Broadway and Main, we're southbound here on Broadway in front of the Bank First building. And just note that the station is located in the existing street parking space. So we'll turn now and go down Main and back up Robinson now. So here we're back on Robinson and Park. We're northbound on Robinson, just north of Park. And again, the station is located in the existing street parking. As we continue on down the route, we'll make a stop at the downtown transit center. Both the inbound and the outbound station are located here. The amenities are in a little bit different physical location because of leveraging the existing canopy and existing structure. But again, all of the amenities will still be here with the raised platform that Brian talked about. As we continue on now to Hudson and 8th, here we're out in front of Elemental Coffee. Again, the station is located in the existing street parking spot. As we continue north and now to 10th and Dewey, it's between Lee and Dewey. Our inbound and outbound station are located in the Parkway and are directly across from one another, leveraging that mid-block crossing that's there today, right out in front of St. Anthony Hospital. We'll continue on now. We make our way west to Classen and up to 13th. So as Jason talked about earlier, a lot of the coordination between the various stakeholders and various things with Public Works and Embark, also working with local developments to make sure that what we're building is aligning with what their improvements are. So what you see in pink here is the intersection improvements here will be designed and constructed as part of the future on-queue development there, kind of in what would be the southwest quadrant of 13th and Classen. But you'll see the inbound and outbound station here are located. One thing that's unique here is that it's very similar to 4th and Robinson, where the bike lane that will be constructed as part of this project from 10th to 16th is going to be in the outside lane of Classen. The outside lane today is underutilized from a vehicle standpoint. And to prevent that conflict point at the actual station, the bike lane will actually go right behind the station and then continue along Classen. So while not shown, the bike lanes here, a part of this project, are from 10th to 16th. So as we continue on to Classen and 18th. So here you have the inbound station is located kind of in that island there, just north of 17th, with a crossing that gets pedestrians back to the signal at 18th. The outbound station here is located just outside of the Homeland grocery store. So continuing on to 23rd, here you'll see both the inbound and outbound are on the far side of the intersection for the direction of travel, but they're also expected to be high ridership here. So one thing that's unique about this, and Brian had showed the standard station rendering, we do have a high ridership where basically you have the same amenities, but you have a double shelter. So you have twice as big a shelter because of the anticipated folks from the traditional bus service that are going to intersect here and leverage the BRT service. So therefore, again, 2 shelters, 2 benches, and 2 ADA staging areas, really focusing on getting pedestrians back to the intersection and making sure that everything you'll see here is all ADA compliant. So as we continue north to Classen and 30th, both of these stations as shown are located on the south side. We're working with local property owners here to understand and make sure we're modifying the appropriate driveways on the outbound station location. Classen and 36th as we continue. Here's both standard stations, both on the far side of the intersections. Continuing on to 42nd. 42nd has a unique opportunity here because just outside of New View, they're on the upper side or the west side of the screen. It's, assisting the visually impaired folks. So we want to make sure we've got an extremely clear and safe place for folks to cross to get to New View and back to the stations. And we're still working with Public Works to understand and to select whether a full signal at 42nd or a mid-block crossing with a signal is best to facilitate that crossing to and from the New View facility. We'll continue on then to Northwest Expressway and Blackwelder. So we've gone north up Classen. Now we've made the left. This is one of the locations that we have a right lane queue jump to go from the outside right lane to turn left onto Northwest Expressway. The inbound station here is located in a bus pull-off area, so that you'll see a common theme along Northwest Expressway where we're able to provide an area for the bus to safely pull over, board in a light, and get the bus back up to speed, find a gap to merge into traffic, and again, provide that sidewalk connection to the nearest intersection. As shown here, the outbound station here, just on the west side of Blackwelder, operates in a very similar manner where we have that bus pull-off zone. Again, connects back to the intersection and provides that connectivity from a sidewalk standpoint. As we continue now to Northwest Expressway and Penn, so this station is just out in front of the Penn Square Mall. The station is positioned to accommodate an extra through lane. So again, working with Public Works and understanding the long-term plan here about having that future expansion, making sure that we're building this station in the right location to where it's not in the way for future widening. Again, there were several park and ride locations that Brian talked about. This is just one of the general areas that will have a park and ride. So the inbound station here is on the west side of Penn. Again, similar scenario here. It's positioned out for future widening along Northwest and provides that bus pull-off area. So we'll continue down Northwest and head south on Independence. So here, the stations are located just south of Northwest, again, outside of Integris Hospital. One of the locations here, if you're familiar with the area, kind of has a pretty aggressive slope that heads down towards that parking lot. So this is one of the locations that there will be a retaining wall on the project. Again, connections back to that existing crossing as part of this project. So we continue now south and we turn and go west on Portland or 56th and head over to Portland. So you'll see both stations here at 56th and Portland are along 56th. Both of them have ADA improvements back to the intersection, but it's key here that both stations either have direct connections or sidewalk to the connection to part of that existing trail network. We'll continue north up Portland now to Northwest, and this is the inbound station. So it's located just south of Northwest Expressway along Portland. Again, connecting sidewalk that connects back north to the intersection and that multi-use path that runs parallel along Northwest Expressway. The outbound station is just west of the intersection here. It's similar to the other stations along Northwest. Brian, if you go next slide, where it allows the bus to pull off and board in the light and then accelerate and merge the bus back safely into traffic. So continuing on to 63rd and Meridian, inbound is located along 63rd. It ties to the existing trail there on the bottom of the screen. And this is the outbound station is actually one that we've recently been working with property owners here. And actually it's shown on Meridian, but it's actually rotated around the corner. If you can imagine on the westbound 63rd, it will stop, board in the light, and then continue on up north along Meridian. So as we continue then to our last stop, which is Northwest Expressway Meridian, this is the end of the line station. So it's expected to have a high ridership here because of having a park and ride in this area. Again, ongoing coordination, like Jason mentioned, with development in this area to accommodate how the bus is going to turn around in this triangular area, the potential park and ride, and then how the station actually ties in with the future mixed use development here. Again, you can see the direct connections back to the existing trail and leveraging the trail network that's already in place. And with that, I'll turn it back to Brian to talk about park and ride considerations and the overall schedule.
So park and ride is a significant portion of the service, and that end of the line station at Meridian is one of the key areas that we identified for the park and ride opportunity. So as I mentioned before, the project team is currently evaluating 2 additional locations other than that Meridian and Northwest Expressway, and working with property owners to identify improvements and connections to each of those locations. In terms of project schedule, so as noted, as Jason noted, we're at the 30% preliminary design or 30% design level in terms of the preliminary design report. So final design is actually scheduled to complete this year with construction next year, and the planned revenue start or opening is planned for late 2023. And that really allows ample time for the completion of construction to include the testing phase and working all the kinks out in the system, similar to what you went through with OKC streetcar in terms of the service. So we've outlined the schedule, and that also includes the planned delivery of the vehicles in time for the testing between construction and the planned revenue start in late 2023. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Marcus, this is Mark Stonecipher. I'm from Ward 8. And one question I had at Northwest Expressway in Portland, when our riders disembark there, will they have easy access to the grocery stores, restaurants, and other businesses in that area?
Yeah, I mean, with every one of these stops, the intent is to get them back to existing infrastructure, and coordinating with local match projects that have other sidewalk projects that, that either tie to it or continue the momentum forward of getting folks to these attractions.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your presentation. I have a series of questions and some comments, actually. First, before I go into those, let me just say, and everyone already knows, I'm a huge supporter of not just public transportation and walkability and bikeability, but very specifically this BRT project. So much so I worked with Councilwoman Hammond to ensure we got 2 more of them in maps 4, one to the northeast side and another one to the south side. So that will be part of our future over the next 10 years. And of course, we know that a regional transit authority conversation is coming as well. So when you all talk about people being able to use the BRT to connect to a streetcar downtown, God willing, we'll have light rail connecting Edmond to Norman before it's all said and done, and some sort of rail service connecting Bricktown, Tinker. And then people can use the BRT to connect to those services. That's where my brain always goes. But more immediately, okay, series of questions. 1, I could have sworn in December, the last time I saw, it might not have been the last time, but it was the one that I remember the most, when I saw a route map. I could have swore I saw the BRT there when it's in downtown, when it gets to 10th Street at the roundabout, that it was going to take Classen Boulevard, like the street along like McNelly's and the optometrist that's there and these sorts of things, and then connect to 13th and then to Classen. But that's not what I just saw here. Can someone help me? Did I just dream up that route I just described?
Yeah, I don't, and I apologize. I'm trying to get to the route map. So can you ask the question again?
Sure. It was specifically, it was your slide that had 10th and Lee. That's why it stood out to me, because I never remembered a 10th and Lee previously. I remembered, and again, December was a crazy month. It's been,
right.
Been wacky, I'll just say that, and wacky year. But Lee and 10th Street was one I don't remember previously being part of the conversation. I remember Hudson down to 10th, then you head west on 10th, then you go around the roundabout, and then you head northwest along like where Villa Teresa and where that row of developments are. Yeah, so I don't ever remember this. Was this always the plan? And I don't know.
Yeah. Uh, Councilman, I can answer that. Yeah, we've been looking at just 10th Street West out of downtown for, a considerable amount of time. I know you've been associated with the project really since it was in the concept plan. We may have shown some variations of coming out of downtown, like when we had our public engagement during the concept planning stage. As we were gathering input on kind of what the final route design would look like. But yeah, we've looked at just 10th Street for quite some time now. I think that's really the only street we've looked at coming out of downtown since HNTB has been involved. So that might have been, and like I said, part of the concept planning when we were still trying to decide, do we stay on Northwest Expressway, for example, or do we go down Independence and serve Integris and Deaconess? I think there were a couple of variations of how we could get out of downtown. So 13, you're probably remembering 13th correctly as an option, but we shouldn't have shown anything recently with that in there. If we did, it was just simply our mistake on a slide or something. But it has been 10th Street.
Okay.
And then if it's okay, while I'm off mute here, I did want to go back and answer Councilman Stonecipher's question just a little bit more specifically. Councilman Stonecipher, when you were asking about sidewalk connections from the stop at Portland and Northwest Expressway, back to restaurants and grocery stores, for example. So we do not have, I'll just say we do not have a sidewalk heading back east connecting back towards like the on the border or the barbecue restaurant that's there on the corner. We do not have a sidewalk going back to the east. We do, of course, have the connection to the multi-use trail, though, that goes to the west. I thought maybe that might have been I didn't know if that was the specific area or restaurants you were asking about.
It wasn't so much the restaurants. It was
okay.
the grocery store that I think would be helpful for our riders.
Yeah. And so yeah, then especially with I guess it's the outbound stop. Yeah, they'll have access to the buy for less there.
So this takes me back to my series of questions then. I'll save that one. So, okay, so 10th Street, that's interesting. I know I've mentioned this both at recent COTPA meetings, I know in private with you, Jason. I think why it keeps popping up in my head, can we go to the 23rd and Classen one, please? Okay, so the reason why I keep mentioning crosswalks and continental crosswalks and their width is those don't look very wide to me. And again, I know I'm just looking at a rendering, but I just cannot stress enough how important, especially at this intersection, that crosswalks are just as wide as humanly possible. You're talking about 4 major connectivity points. And so that's why I keep bringing that up. If you were wondering, Jason, like why I keep asking something that seems like there's an obvious answer, like it's because this image is what keeps coming up in my head, and they just seem very similar to the kind of crosswalks that exist, in the city presently. So I just wanted to voice that again here.
Yes.
The other one, can we go to the Blackwelder and Northwest Expressway one too, please? Thank you. I'm very excited about this one, particularly as it relates to the bike walk OKC revisions. I suggested, though, I am but one voice, I suggested that Bike Walk give very serious thought to, at this particular intersection, the bike connectivity from Blackwelder, because that's a neighborhood, right? Just to the neighborhoods, plural, right? Whether it's Military Park, Putnam Heights, there are neighborhoods there. And I think that someone should have access with a bike to this intersection, not just to connect to the BRT, but here's, I think, the challenge. Getting across that street on a bike to work or shop at anything at Belle Isle Station or Penn Square Mall. Like, to me, that just, I just feel like that's such a necessary thing. As someone who has tried my darndest to bike to either of those two locations from Paseo, I mean, it's like the last level of a Super Mario game when you get over there. It's just impossible. So I'm just wondering, on that north side of the street, like what I suggested to Bike Walk was like a cycle track, you know, along that side of the road. So I would just voice the need for that. Because again, it's not just about the shopping across Northwest Expressway. It's about the person who's using their bike. Again, it's National Bike Month. I believe the meeting began with that. It's about someone using, I saw Mark smile with that one. Thank you, Mark. But it's about it's about getting the person who's using their bike as transportation to get to work. And as we just heard, we have so many jobs along this route. And so I just really would like to see us think about that for this side of the road. And then that takes me to, actually, Councilman Stonecipher, you drew my attention to something that I have, well, two final comments. One is related to Mark's notes. I think it is an incredibly missed opportunity for us as a city if we do not figure out how to provide pedestrian infrastructure from Independence to Meridian. I just think that is an incredibly missed opportunity if we don't figure out a way to do that. Because again, we're not just talking about the shopping and the recreation as it relates to enjoying Clark's barbecue or on the border or what have you. It is about the jobs. We are talking about our service industry, an industry that, I'll just remind everybody, that we don't need the reminder, has just been through, the fires, right, during the pandemic. And so I think that walkability component of someone who's using the BRT to get off there at 56th and Portland, they should be able to get off right there and walk east to go to work at Clark's. And until this slide, I did not realize that was not part of the conversation. And I'm just going to keep emphasizing that. I think that is an incredibly missed opportunity. And so what we're going to end up with is we're going to have workers walking along Northwest Expressway, a 6-lane traffic corridor called an expressway, to get to work. And that's to say nothing about families who are going, or people on dates or on their own, going to eat at any of those restaurants. I think that's just an incredibly missed opportunity. And I would really like to see us rethink that in terms of sidewalk connectivity there. Had I known that was missing, I would have proposed it in the Bike Walk OKC revisions. And maybe, since I know planning staff are listening to this, count this as one of those revisions. And then I would also say that again, I can't stress enough, from Independence to Meridian, because there's Panera Bread, there's Schlotsky's, there's all these different, there's places. And I just think connecting people to those places by foot and by bike and by BRT is just, it's just how I think that's what we need to be thinking about here. I would also say, and I'm going to sound like, a broken record here, I'm really excited about the 15-minute frequency during peak. I remain gravely concerned about a 20-minute frequency during off times, because first, what are the peak hours?
Peak is what, Jesse, till 7? Yep.
Like, beginning from when?
Yeah, 7. So we'll run peak frequency until 7. Well, let me back up. I mean, we still have to develop the operating plan, the operating budget, but at this time, we're thinking we'll run peak until about 7 p.m.
What time would that start, Jason?
In the morning, so roughly 6 a.m., perhaps earlier.
Okay, so I'm not as concerned if like we're talking like from 6 a.m. straight through to 7 p.m. that people would expect 15-minute frequency. I think that's good. My concern is that, especially considering the nightlife that we know the city has, and especially considering that route of Expressway, Classen, and downtown, and people being able to use the BRT to get to Plaza District for that nightlife. And I'm not even talking about like clubs and that. I'm talking like going to dinner at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. in Uptown, in the Asian District, in the Plaza District, in Midtown, in Bricktown, in downtown. I really worry what happens if someone wants to use the BRT for those sorts of things. And that's for recreation and consumption. Again, the worker here should also be, right? That's what I've always loved about Embark. I think we excel at customer service. That is what you all have taught me since I started serving on the trust. What are possibilities for the evenings and the weekends? Because if people, I guess my point is if people think it's 20 minutes, they might associate that with those peak times too. And I think it could, create a negative perception of the entire system. So that's why I really feel like we could just get that 15 minutes consistently. So that's another thing I'd want to say.
Yeah. I think, no, definitely duly noted. And we will take all that into consideration, of course, when we finalize our operating plan. And as a cockpit trustee and council, we'll certainly get that in front of you as soon as we have it. I do think, though, we'll be able to borrow from our experience with the streetcar a lot, because we run, peak and off peak with streetcar. And from a, marketing standpoint, and really trying to communicate the value of the service, most of our messaging, if not all, is generally around that peak service time, and I would suspect we would do the same with the BRT, trying to convey the difference between bus rapid transit and regular bus service. It's, hey, peak frequency is 15 minutes. So that's what that's what we focus our message on. So, to your point, we don't have customers thinking, oh, well, that's only 20 minutes. That's not a dramatic improvement. When really there's a minimal amount of hours, if you will, that we're running that off peak timing.
Again, I guess what I'm really, and it's crystallizing in my head now, I just have so many friends who work in the service industry, so many.
Mm-hmm.
Who work at places like Bar Balada on Main Street, or, Kitchen 32, this, that, or, all these different, and this so well because our customers, they are working in these jobs 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 p.m. And I just think that we need to, I just think we need to really think about serving those jobs that we just heard that are along the route, and that those jobs are not just that traditional 9 to 5. They're not even close, right? So that I just really want to push us on, I really want to challenge us on this topic of the worker and the timing and the frequency. And I think I'm not going to go there. So no, I think that's very important. And then my final thing, I know I might not get my way on this, but I'm going to voice it all the same. I'm hopeful about it, but I think it's very important that those new sidewalks that are coming along the route on Expressway and on Classen, I know the budget doesn't allow for trees as a canopy, which was a word I heard earlier in this presentation, but that's something that I'm working on to try and secure, because I believe very, very strongly from all of my years serving on COTPA and attending these transit conferences, that the pedestrian in that first mile, last mile from their home to these wonderful news stations, that walk or bike ride needs to be as accommodating and pleasant as possible. And trees on a prairie, which is where we live, right, adds to that experience. And so that's, I just want anyone who's listening to know that we are thinking about that. I think that's very important. And then to conclude on this topic, I would hate for anyone who just heard me walk us through my questions and comments to think that this is like a negative reaction to the presentation or to bus rapid transit. I know in Oklahoma, we have a habit of everyone thinks we're very nice. We're nice people. And I think a lot of that comes from we just say nice things to each other. And there's often a lack of like constructive criticism. That's just not the world I come from. I'm an Oklahoman, but I come from like a film criticism background. So I can love a movie. I can love Casablanca or Citizen Kane, and I can point out how it can be even better. So that's all that's going on here. It's very important to me that no one mistake my constructive criticism from the last little bit here as like a negative thing. I hope I've not communicated any sort of negativity. I'm just trying to make sure that this nearly $30 million investment meets the potential that we know it can. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have a few.
I have a couple questions as well.
Okay, I'll go first. And I just want to also just say second to everything Councilperson Cooper said. So I'm just gonna, there are a few questions that helped check the box for. And I think sort of dovetailing off of that pedestrian experience conversation. And I think 23rd and Classen is a really easy example for me, at least, because looking at the overhead look of it, like obviously I appreciate the ADA compliance because that intersection right now is kind of a mess with consistency of all of the corners. But I think something that I am consistently seeing in those, and I don't know if this is maybe for a later conversation, and this is kind of more of a higher view, but even opportunities to create curbs that really bump out and make the walking distance between, like while you're actually on the street in the crosswalk, smaller. Even though I know those intersections are quite wide, that might not feel like a huge difference, but even just that, that little bit more opportunity for cars not to take those turns at really high speeds because they feel like a ramp. Just any opportunity to really build up that curb and make that experience while people are waiting to cross the street, but also in the crossing, making it a little more friendly. So I was just curious what opportunities on those sort of intersection improvements, I think along all of the stops, are we exploring those? Like I even saw like there's a slip lane on one of the, and I don't know if it's like, it's one of the, it might be the Blackwelder one where there's like a slip lane that gets you onto Northwest Expressway, even opportunities to close things like that, to just fewer points of contact, I guess, for pedestrians and vehicles to collide. I'm just curious about if those are opportunities we're exploring as part of those infrastructure or intersection upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, I'll the answer to that one. Yeah, we have talked about some bump outs in the downtown area. We could expand that to, other places along the corridor.
I would appreciate exploring that, because I think even places that aren't downtown where we, I guess, aren't in the mindset of prioritizing pedestrians, I think that's like where we want to go. Because I think, to Councilperson Cooper's point, like if the experience getting to and from feels like you're taking your life in your own hands, or you're, just those little things that really create a different experience for people, I think will lend to and contribute to the success of utilization. And that kind of leads me to my other question, which is a very nitpicky and very specific, and I think we've had this conversation before. It's been a little bit, so on both the newer bus stops as well as the streetcar stops, it's a glass. Everything's kind of a glass panel, and especially in the summer, but anytime that it's really sunny and the sun is low in the sky, I know you went out and like measured the temperature and it didn't say the temperature changed, but it feels like you are an ant under a magnifying glass. Okay. This last summer, I was like, I'm going to really think about this. I'm going to go stand outside and so I don't know if it's just like on your body, it's changing temperature, but the air, I don't know the science of it, but really the experience is and I talk to people when I'm sitting at the bus stop and we're all like, we're going to stand over here. And so just any opportunities there are to build in shading. And I don't know, obviously visibility is important, but just I don't know. And I was looking through the design guide. I don't know if there's any opportunities to add anything or if that's kind of like an in-stone document, but just something that can provide some shading, because especially in the summer when that sun is lower in the sky and your back is to it or it's on the side, it's just, I don't even know how to describe it, but it is so hot. And so I end up like actually waiting outside of the actual shelter just because it just feels so hot. So I just wanted to, I know that's like a really specific thing, but I just wanted to bring that up again in case there's opportunities to think through. Find those little amenity changes that again, hopefully will improve this experience and utilization of it.
Yep. We will look at other options or ways to mitigate that. Yeah. Okay.
That's all I got. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Okay. Is there a way we can pull up the slide that shows 30th and Classen, please? Thank you. So I have a couple of acquaintances who have reached out to me concerning this area and some of the bus stops proposed that would end up actually blocking their businesses. Specifically as a faux restaurant, they're on 30th and they are just off of 30th in Classen, and it's just going to end up being something that also blocks their restaurant. He's reached out to the assistant. Let me read this. I'm going to apologize. The assistant city manager's office trying to get some information. He says he hasn't really gotten any calls back, and he's having an issue with being able to get some more information on it. Are we going to be blocking driveways into businesses with adding these things?
So it varies from location to location, but there are some driveways that will be potentially closing. In this particular one, we have met with the owner of that restaurant a couple of different times. In fact, I'm working on a meeting to go see the owner and visit with him myself about transit and his concerns. Again, we are just at 30% design, so we have opportunities to look at other locations. There's some places though, like 30th and Classen, I think is a good one. If we're going to serve the intersection and we don't put it, say for example, in front of this restaurant, then it's like, well, where do we move it? And we've got to block somebody's drive. It's almost like if we don't block that person's driveway, a driveway has to be blocked if we're going to put a stop location there.
Is there not a way of sharing bus stops with current ones that are already in place, or anything, so we can rotate which, they know which bus is coming at that time so that we can avoid blocking any business?
I would say I wouldn't necessarily think we would be blocking a business. The other side of it is I guess you could also say we're potentially bringing customers to the business. And I think, a lot of the businesses along the corridor see it that way. and some don't. However, that's why we are meeting with every single business owner and or property owner along the route. We have a community engagement liaison on staff that is doing nothing but that, so that we can hear things like this from business owners before any final decisions are made. So the question about whether we can combine bus stops or not, with the bus rapid transit, the platforms are so much larger than the existing bus stops that, it would be difficult to put a BRT platform in the same footprint that we have for a regular bus stop in most cases. And then again, we're not intentionally trying to block anyone's business. Again, I think it's just a matter of how the particular business owner looks at it. Is it bringing customers to their business, or do they think it's impeding visibility from the street? But again, we're committed, and I think with the Oklahoma City streetcar as our kind of our track record, if you will, we are all about working with the business owners. We can't always make 100% of the people 100% happy, but we do make adjustments to the project based on feedback from those along the corridor. That's why we have a stakeholder work group made of people along the corridor. That's why we're meeting with all the business owners. And if there's a solution here that we can come to with this particular restaurant owner, or really any business along the route that has concerns, we're definitely gonna do that. We've had an opportunity to engage a business at 42nd and Classen that had some similar concerns. And, we evaluated that intersection, and there's a strong likelihood we'll be moving that platform. So we are open to trying to work with the business owners, and I'm happy to brief you or council on the outcome of my meeting with this gentleman here.
No, I'd appreciate that, please. I know specifically on this one, I mean, there's an entrance on 30th to his restaurant as well as Classen, but Classen being the major thoroughfare that it is in no comparison to 30th whatsoever, and it would completely get jammed up in this specific situation. So anything that you are able to find out or discuss with the owner, I would greatly appreciate knowing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then I have a couple follow-ups to the two other counselors, if I may. One is I want to echo Councilwoman Hammond's notes about the bump outs. I mean, because literally in my mind, and I've already said this to Jason, like in my mind, I think of like the OKC Boulevard and the as it is right next to Scissortail Park, like wide crosswalks and just these wide open like spaces there at those corners where people can gather as they're waiting to cross the street. So, and now that I'm looking at 30th and Classen, I would challenge us to try and execute that at these intersections all across the route, because I think that we are now moving a public transit enhancement into a part of our city that has not seen that sort of, enhancement since it began all those years ago with the streetcar that used to be on Classen, right? So I think that this has to be like a reintroduction. And I can tell you walkability and transit and homelessness and education, I've said it before, these were the top issues when I was knocking doors. So walkability is very much top of mind. So again, when I look at 30th here, or the possibility of a signalized 42nd Street, or again, that Blackwelder, I would like to see each one of those intersections just wide continental crosswalks, and then some sort of bump out that says to a family of 4 or 6 or a couple that as they're waiting for that light to turn green for them to walk across those crosswalks, that they just feel safe even waiting there. And think about it. You look at this grassy field across the street from, where we're talking about right now, and development itself, I think, improves when those intersections have more gathering places for pedestrians. I think it allows for more people to take advantage, being able to walk to shops. So that's just my challenge here. So I really appreciate Councilwoman Hammond's comment. And then to Councilor Carter's comment, I actually received an email over the weekend for me to call the owner of that particular pho restaurant. Jason, real quick, as I know there's often a lot of confusion when it comes to transit property values. Do they go up or down when transit comes to a neighborhood, like when BRT or streetcar? Just curious.
Generally speaking, BRT streetcar results in increased property values.
Increased property values. Good. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. And I just also want to remind everybody who's following along this presentation, and I know we just went in depth with this back in October with a zoning case, but I just want to really remind everybody, this might be not a familiar thing I'm about to say to people who aren't familiar with transit conversations, have not lived in cities where there's that kind of reliable transit. But that sidewalk infrastructure that's coming to Classen is going to bring foot traffic of people who live in the neighborhoods around there right now. My neighborhood, Paseo, Putnam Heights, Military, Helm Farm. We are going to be the people walking Classen. We already go to these pho restaurants because they are amazing. We already go to CVS because they have the basic needs of the individual. We go to Lee's, right? Because they are also incredible. That sidewalk infrastructure is about to become a game changer. It is going to allow people access to these businesses in a way we've not had before. In other words, property values will rise. Revenue to these businesses will rise. And what must also go away in this conversation, I will say, is stigma. Stigma about who uses public transportation. I use public transportation. I am an adjunct professor, a former middle school college preparation teacher right here in Oklahoma City Public Schools. Councilwoman Hammond works in mental health, is a council person, uses public transportation. Councilman Greenwell, an accountant, uses public transportation. This stigma must also disappear from our minds. And quite frankly, that stigma, we must really stop and ask ourselves. As the beginning of this meeting, the whole meeting began, we talked about the Oklahoma Standard. We love to talk about the Oklahoma Standard. We just came out of the anniversary of the OKC bombing. We love to talk about helping our neighbors. Those without a home, experiencing homelessness, are also our neighbors. And that's all I want to say about that. Thank you.